Welcome to CRC's Garage. I am Chris. In this episode, this will be the first installment of our engine build series. In this series, we're going to be rebuilding 3 engines. That's why it's titled Hemi versus Wedge, because 2 of the engines are Hemis and 1 of them is a Wedge. We're going to be building them kind of similar. You'll see as we go, as we build them, as we put them together. But in the end goal here is I'd like to get all 3 engines dynoed. 1 should be relatively easy to get done. 2 of them are going to have their challenges, but hopefully we can work through that. But please subscribe. As you can imagine, assembling 3 engines isn't going to be cheap, and this is going to be a long-term project. It's going to take a couple months to put together. But let's go over the motors and see what we're starting with. So I wanted to show you some differences between the engine blocks that we're using, the differences between the 3 engines that we're building. So this is a 360 Chrysler block. It's not the Hemi block. The Hemi block's at the is at the machine shop getting finished up. But these blocks are similar enough to show some differences. So this, like I said, this is a 360 LA block. It shares the same bottom end here. So you can see where this is where the main caps would bolt on. This is where the crankshaft would be. And the block ends at the center line of the crankshaft. So all early Hemis are like that. And then Chrysler small blocks are like that. Now on a Chrysler big block, you can see the skirt on the block extends past the center line of the crankshaft. So this adds a lot of rigidity to the block itself. It does make it heavier, but these are pretty strong blocks. We're not gonna be pushing the limit horsepower wise for any of these motors. So none of this really matters in the grand scheme of things, but it's just differences between the engine blocks that we're working on. Now the Chrysler block, the big block here, only uses 2 bolts to retain the mains. The 426 Hemi blocks, 2nd generation Hemis, they are based off the Chrysler big block, but they do have, think the center 3 main caps are cross bolted. And this is the 5.7 Hemi block. You can see that it uses the same deep skirt block. So the block extends past the center line of the crankshaft, like the Chrysler big block. So it adds strength there. And plus, they're cross all of them. Yeah, all 5 of them. The main caps here are cross bolted. So that also ties the main caps into the lower half of the block there, increasing the strength of the block. There's some guys that really push how much horsepower these things can handle. But yeah, like I said, we're not going to be anywhere close to exceeding any of that. But just some interesting differences between the 3 motors. I think that's pretty much it on engine blocks. This is one of the original pistons from the 341 Hemi, the DeSoto Hemi. You can see the 2 valve notches across from each other there. And then this is a rod and piston combo from the 5.7 Hemi here. You can see quite a bit of technology over the years. So this is a really big, heavy piston with a lot of skirt there. And these new Hemis have quite a lot of mass taken out, material taken out of them. So yeah, and drive, they have, the skirts are coated with friction reducing coating there too. But just to illustrate the bore size difference here between the 5.7 Hemi and the Chrysler big block here, you can see how much bigger the bore is on the big block here. We built the 383 that we're building compared to the 5.7 Hemi. Even the 341 Hemi has a smaller bore than the 5.7 Hemi, because the 341 Hemi, the DeSoto Hemi, has a really long stroke. It's a 3.81 or 3.80 inch stroke. So they had a really long stroke from the factory and a smaller bore. But other than that, I think that's pretty much the differences you need to know. It's not really going to make a big difference horsepower wise with these engines. But just to illustrate the basic architecture differences of the blocks. So again, here's the head for the 341 Hemi, the DeSoto Hemi. It's interesting here. This is a valve from the 5.7 Hemi. Drops into there. But they used, the DeSoto Hemi actually uses a larger exhaust valve than the 5.7 Hemi. But here's an intake valve from the 5.7 Hemi. But the intake valve is actually just a little bit bigger. Not much, but yeah, it's a little bit bigger than the DeSoto's. So, yeah, just an interesting note there. I'm surprised they went to such a small valve on the 5.7 Hemi, but I guess they realized that they rather have a larger intake valve than the exhaust valve to get whatever flow balance between the two sides that they were trying to get. And then, yeah, they don't compare at all to the big block valves here. This is the 5.7 Hemis. Considerably smaller than the big blocks, intake and exhaust. I think these are the big blocks have a 214 intake and a man, I can't remember, 181 exhaust, I think, or is that a max wedge? Something like that. But yeah, they're quite a bit bigger, but like I said, the big blocks don't flow as well compared to a Hemi. So even with the larger valves, I think the flow is a lot better on these stock 5.7 Hemi heads than this aftermarket big block head. So here's the intake port of the DeSoto Hemi. That's the intake side. These are just water passages that are blocked off by the intake manifold. The center one's a heat crossover. The DeSoto Hemi used a heat crossover underneath the intake manifold to help warm up the carburetor for cold weather, stuff like that, drivability wise. But what's a good illustration here? So they're decent size. They're still kind of small on the small side. Here's a spark plug. So just to give you an idea how big the port is. Now on the 5.7 Hemi, the ports are huge. Look at how big that port is compared to the DeSoto Hemi. And here's the same spark plug. It fits in the corner of it where I think this pretty much blocked the whole bottom half of the intake runner on that DeSoto Hemi. So yeah, huge ports compared to the DeSoto Hemi. And same with the big block here. The big block, it's bigger than the DeSoto Hemi intake port, but still nowhere close to the size of the intake port on the 5.7 Hemi. So yeah, these 5.7 Hemis, they can move a lot of air. So I think, and that's the size of the ports here, they are designed for fuel injection. I think that's one of the reasons why we're going to keep it fuel injection. So I don't know if this would probably be a significant horsepower loss with a carburetor compared to fuel injection, just because of how lazy these ports are going to be at low RPM situations. When you're trying to turn this into a carburetor that has fuel flow going through the intake manifold runners and into the cylinder head there. Yeah, they're designed for fuel injection, so I think we're going to keep it fuel injection. But the other two are going to be carburetor. The DeSoto is going to be a carburetor, and the Chrysler 383 big block is going to be a carburetor. So that's where we're going to diverge there with induction-wise. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this video. Trying to think if there's anything else I really wanted to go over. But please subscribe. This is going to be a long-term project to finish these 3 engines. So yeah, I'd appreciate if you subscribe, like the video, please. And we'll start getting parts in for the 383 and probably the 5.7 Hemi as well. The DeSoto, as soon as I get that back from the engine, as soon as I get that engine block back from the machine shop, we'll start working on that one too. So as we go along, I'll show you what we're going to use on them and why, and compare them to what the other 2 engines do. So stay tuned. I think this should be a interesting project.